Hey, everybody, welcome to the Hot and Hauter podcast. I'm Arti.
And I'm Dan.
Every episode, I give Dan a recipe and we find out if it's
A success,
or a disaster.
nevertheless, it's bound to be an adventure. Let's get to cooking. You know you've had too much sugar when like your ears feel stopped up?
Woo! So, Dan, really, what do we have this? What did we make this week?
We made cinnamon rolls.
Yes, we did.
I feel sorry for the audio listeners because we're just stuffing our faces right now.
Right? There's just a lot of smacking and
Cinnamon roll ASMR.
yeah, right? Ooh. What is this podcast?
Stop. That creeps me out. I don't want to hear it. Yes, sir. Cinnamon rolls. I will say this is a very I think a lot of people may have a preconceived notion when it comes to cinnamon rolls. And I was talking to my wife about this because before this, my experience with cinnamon rolls was basically either the Pillsbury thing you get in the tins.
Yeah.
That you come home and then you just, you warm up the icing, you cook it and then you bake it, excuse me, and then you ice it. Or I guess the highest form of cinnamon roll I've had would have been like Cinnabon.
Oh, yeah.
And which is fine, but it's still
Yeah.
like a fast food cinnamon roll
Yes.
delicatessen kind of thing.
Yeah.
These are a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Like a whole nother level. Homemade, fresh cinnamon rolls.
Yeah.
These are up. This episode is up there with like chicken parm. It's that good. It's that good. Like chicken parm is like only the second episode, but that's like my penultimate.
Yeah.
I peaked early. Well, I'm climbing back up. So anyway, Arti, I don't want to steal the show. You tell us so I can eat. Tell us more about cinnamon rolls.
Good. Put the fifth one in your gullet.
Do not judge me.
So, cinnamon rolls. They actually, a form of sticky bun has been eaten since like Egyptians and Roman times.
Okay.
But it wasn't the cinnamon roll we think of. Those were more like sticky buns, and they'd use like honey and dates and things like that, because that's what they had.
But I'm assuming, was it like a dough and then baked?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was more like a sticky bread kind of thing. And then fast forward to the 1700s, and a bunch of European countries start making their own form of the cinnamon roll. But it's not until the Swedish get involved.
Ooh.
And they add the cinnamon to the bun. They roll it up and add cinnamon.
I don't think we've had the Swedes represented.
Well, they're thrown down with this thing. The only difference is that they did not have this like the frosting, and they had cinnamon and cardamom in them. But that was the original. That is where what we know as a cinnamon bun comes from.
You said cinnamon what? Cinnamon cardamom?
Oh, they use cinnamon and cardamom.
Cardamom. What is that?
It's just a spice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So around this same time, Swedish immigrants start coming to America, and they introduce us to the cinnamon bun. Americans do. Frosting's added, and that's our version. And then Pillsbury gets involved. Speaking of, you said everyone has a conception of what they are. They get involved and they start mass producing them in the refrigerated tubes that we all know.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets it out to the masses.
Sure. I can see those price points being low.
Yeah.
And to the point where it's, general commerce.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the history of the actual cinnamon we know of. There's a cool little thing that in Sweden, they have a holiday for cinnamon buns. It's on October the 4th, and they call them cannibale. Cannibale.
Cannibale.
Cannibale.
Hey, I was literally
Oh,
making cinnamon rolls on the 4th of October.
I know. That was unintentional.
That's awesome. Here's to you, Sweden.
Yeah, right? So, there we go. That's the history of the cinnamon roll.
I find it interesting that Sweden, of all places, had been credited with the administration of cinnamon to these. I really feel like that would have been something more from like Italy or one of the more. When I think of spices, I don't think of Sweden as a spice kind of country, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. I think of more like fish or seafood and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, before this, cinnamon wasn't really a easily. It was very hard to get.
Okay.
And it was really only imported for the rich.
Okay.
And that all comes from I think it's the 14th century. The Dutch take over the island of Sri Lanka, which is cinnamon, where it comes
Okay.
from, and they just are the only people who export it because they take over the island. Because
a monopoly on cinnamon. Interesting.
Pretty much. Because of that, it makes it easier to get in all the European countries, but it's still very expensive at that time. So that's why it took until the 1700s for it to become a widely used spice. Because throughout history, cinnamon has been like only for royalty and monarchs and kings and the richest of rich people.
Sure.
So
yeah, the delicate foods and such that are harder to come by. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, this recipe that you have, which I appreciate the name, Haute Sticky Cinnamon Bun, as in Hot and Hotter. Is this one of your internet amalgamations, or is this a little bit more personal to you? Like, how did you come about this specific recipe?
So it is an internet amalgamation, but majority of the recipe is attributed to, well, really all the recipe. I made like a couple small changes, but to let me see if I can remember this right. Vanilla bean blog.
Oh, okay.
So essentially, it started as it always does, as I start combing the internet for all these recipes. The thing that made me want to use this one is that I believe it's a woman who runs the blog. She uses honey as the sugar for the yeast. So I thought that would be cool. And also, she did the slow fermentation, which I like to do. I think it's a cool aspect.
Okay.
The things that I think the only thing I actually changed was, I think in her recipe she does a second ferment. So the first one is overnight, and then she rolls them, cuts them, and then does a second one. I cut the second one out because 24 hours is enough.
The instructions we did after I cut them, you said put them in for another up to 18 hours.
It says you can. It says you can store them.
Oh, okay. I thought that was actually required.
No, it doesn't hurt. I mean, it just allows them to ferment, not ferment.
Just the yeast to work a little bit longer.
Yeah. It allows it to make them
rise,
deepen the flavor.
Yeah.
But in her recipe, it was a requirement, like then put them in again.
Okay. I mean, I would just again mindless following the thing. I do like how in this recipe you actually include a video about stretching and folding, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in depth once we get into the actual recipe. But you said you chose this one specifically because of the honey in the dough. Have you ever seen that before, or is that something that's uncommon?
Well, usually it's sugar. Usually people
use
sugar. I just wanted to see if it had a different flavor or better flavor. And it was good. was good. I don't know if there's much of a difference, but I think I just like the idea of using honey. So,
I mean, chemistry
mm,
wise, I couldn't tell you anything was different about it.
yeah,
I thought it was great. I really
yeah,
did.
yeah.
Um, I didn't really notice the difference. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and jump into the recipe here. So basically, the tools you'll need will probably be a stand mixer, and then when you're rolling the dough out, this is a large amount of dough with regards to, you might need a rolling pin or something to kind of help you. You just manhandling it with your own hands, it'll wear you out more. Get some tools that'll help you out there, and then maybe like a bench cutter or something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, the and so there's three portions to this recipe that we have here. We have the dough, we have the filling,
Hmm.
and then we have the frosting.
Hmm.
So the dough, and I'm gonna try to inject science here to see if it follows along, see if I know. So you asked for 3/4 cup of whole milk warm between 100 and 110. I'm assuming that's to activate the yeast.
Yes.
Let's go. All right, 2 1/4 teaspoon of instant yeast, and then your quarter cup of honey, which
Hmm.
you said is a substitute for sugar. If
Correct.
someone wanted to make this with granulated sugar, what would they use amount wise? Do you think?
Well, it calls for 1/4 a cup of the honey. So, I mean, just do 1 to 1
Okay.
because all the sugar's doing is, I mean, it's adding sweetness, of course, but it's feeding the yeast.
hmm
That's the whole point of it.
I've never. It's like there's certain substances that when you're measuring cups with, it's really annoying. One of them's like honey, and another one's like
Hmm.
peanut butter.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, it was great. I think in the final product, the honey was a really good choice. 10 tablespoons of room temperature unsalted butter. So
Hmm.
that's a stick and two more tablespoons there.
Yep.
Again, room temperature, just is that for combination sake? It's easier to mix and blend.
Yeah.
Eh,
Yeah.
Okay. Would the cold, if it was cold, shock the yeast back into being less productive?
You just want to be able to, it just wouldn't mix in. It'd be too cold.
Okay, gotcha.
It'd just,
Four.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
You just be mixing chunks of butter forever.
Okay.
And then you'd overmix the dough, which you don't want to do.
Well, I was extra sure to make I made extra sure to melt, not melt, but soften the butter, because if you think back to the croissants, I didn't do it enough and my butter didn't break down enough.
Hmm.
So I was very conscious about making sure that butter was a nice malleable blob.
Yeah.
4 cups of all-purpose flour and 2 teaspoons of salt. So that's your ingredients for the dough. Pretty straightforward dough. A
Hmm.
little
Yeah.
aggressive on the sticky side.
Oh, yeah, it is.
But yeah, you said grease a large bowl with nonstick spray for later use. In a bowl, combine the eggs, milk, and honey. Um, in the bowl stand mixer, you have the paddle attachment, flour, yeast, salt, and mix on low to combine. Then add the egg mixture, and then continue to mix and so forth. And then add the butter one piece at a time.
Yeah.
I've seen other recipes do that. What's the purpose of adding one, like, small amounts of butter at a time?
It just incorporates better to the dough.
Okay.
I mean, that's really it.
Okay. Butter, I can see butter if it's too cold being hard to
Hmm.
mix.
Yeah.
So I mean that makes sense. All right. So and then basically you incorporate all that, and then you move your dough to the greased bowl. Now is the greased
Hmm.
bowl just because it's so sticky you don't want it sticking to the bowl?
100%. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I'm very appreciative of that grease because this thing was aggressive.
Yeah.
Um, and then it was interesting how we did this in the bowl. And folding during fermentation. The only thing that we've done similar to this, besides just basic kneading dough, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the
Hmm.
mic. Besides just basic kneading dough, was when we did the croissants, and you
Hmm.
actually had to laminate it, which is an essential process for the layers.
Yeah.
What is the process of stretching and folding during this fermentation period?
You're just starting the kneading process. That's all it
Oh,
is. You're just kneading the dough in stages instead of doing it for a long time at once.
okay. And as you get further and further, because you do this, you fold it. The video you have on the link, you kind of work it from a side, do a 180, work it from the other side, 90
Hmm.
degrees, work it from a side, 180,
Yeah.
and you do that twice around, and then you let it sit for 30 minutes. Then you do
Yeah.
it again, let it
Hmm.
sit for 30 minutes. So for about 2 hours, about four folding sessions, and then you cover, put in the fridge for up to 72 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Slow
That's
fermentation.
wow. Okay. It rose significantly in the beginning, but then after that, I didn't really notice anything changing
Mm-hmm.
with the rising of the with the yeast doing its thing. Although after you leave it in, I left it in overnight. I think I did about 16 hours or so.
Mm-hmm.
I took it out, and that first like knead, you have to knead it about 10 or 12 times. It was like a whoopee cushion.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was
It
just
is. It
so
is.
much air in there. Um, but then you what you do is you grease your pan, put your parchment paper down, which was a lifesaver because I could see this thing getting real sticky
Oh yeah. Yeah.
real quick.
Yeah.
Um, and then in the bowl you mix the brown sugar, the cinnamon, and the salt. This was one of my favorite parts. I really didn't understand how a cinnamon roll was made.
Mm-hmm.
I never really thought about it. And then the process of flattening out your dough, putting down a layer of melted butter,
Mm-hmm.
and then putting the cinnamon mixture on there and just making sure that's kind of nice and level and even across. I thought that was really cool. And then you roll it
Yeah.
up nice and tight. That was
Mm-hmm.
really fun. I enjoyed
Yeah.
that. Are there tips and tricks that you can offer anyone out there that's doing that just to kind of keep things more consistent? I'm not the best on flattening dough, so my ends were a little bit skinnier than like the center.
That's fine.
Uh, but ultimately, it was a nice, good log.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's all you want is just you want a long cylinder of dough in the end. The
Okay.
only tip is just work fast because it's a sticky dough. So the longer it's at room temperature, the stickier it gets. So just move fast. That's it.
And plenty of flour on your workspace.
Yeah. And also flour your hands too.
Yes.
One thing I would do next time, this is just for aesthetics, nothing else. After I rolled it, I should have put it back in the fridge so it firms back up so it was easier to cut.
Oh, okay. I could see that. I guess I worked fast enough where it wasn't that big of an issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
that would be the only thing I would change probably is, if you want a easier cutting of the dough, put it in the fridge for like 30 minutes and pull it back out and cut it.
That's smart. I guess you kind of call that on the fly as you're in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah. So like I said, you put the melted butter on, which the filling recipe is half a cup of packed brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 2 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter.
Yeah.
And I think there was one other thing because this is an older one. Yeah, I think you had to update it. Trying to remember.
There should have been a cinnamon, sugar, and salt and butter.
Yeah. Okay, I did it right then.
Mm.
Yeah. So we did that, got that on there, and then a nice tight cylinder. Just kind of rolled it up. Um, I really enjoyed. I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like seeing how things work from the inside out. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And then you cut it. I used the little bench cutter, just the little like handheld guillotine looking thing that worked
Mm-hmm.
perfectly.
Yeah.
I had that on standby to kind of help if I needed to scoop under if it was getting sticky to the work surface.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, this is where you said this is optional, but I put those in the greased pan, and then I put the greased pan back in the fridge for another 16 hours or so.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I did pull them out. And when I pulled them out to start getting ready for the baking side, I noticed that there was like cinnamon blood or something. Like there was
Mm-hmm.
this
Yeah.
juice. What
Yeah.
was that?
It's just liquid from the dough leaching onto it. That's it.
Okay, I
Or
thought I'd done
it
something wrong.
could have been liquid from the fridge. Could have been, well, you know how.
Like condensation?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, I better not be dropping like coolant on my, my cinnamon rolls here.
You got that fridge liquid, man. Gotta watch out.
You can't just throw terms like that out like willy nilly. You just your casual fridge liquid.
Fridge
What?
liquid.
I need
Come
to
on,
run down to the store and get some more fridge liquid.
dude. You just gotta go to the hardware store and tell them you need fridge coolant. You gotta
Well,
refill your fridge coolant.
well, they still tasted good if there was some kind of coolant on there. But yeah, so I it almost looked like melted candy if that makes sense. It had like a
Yeah.
dark brown texture. It looked like molasses or syrup
Yeah.
to an
Yeah.
extent. But it was a little sticky, but because they were cold, it wasn't that big of a deal. And then when I threw them in the oven, they were they smelled so good.
Yeah. It
They smelled
does.
so good.
It's very much one of those recipes where it's like the whole when you walk into a bakery and you're like, oh, that's what it
Yes,
does to your house. You're just like,
absolutely.
oh, it's so good.
It's just great.
Yeah.
And this one's a 350, so like this is the lowest my stove could probably. Well, I mean, it's like the starter recipe. You can go lower,
Hmm.
but it's one of the lower. So that's why you slow bake it more for 27, about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Rotating it halfway through.
Hmm.
Interesting there, but and I thought they were going to burn. I thought that was really long because most of the stuff we bake doesn't ever go much more than 20 minutes that we've
Yeah.
done in the past.
Um, yeah. This is really more of a bread though.
That's true. I guess we haven't really done a bread. We did the
Mhm.
croissants, but those are lighter and flakier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
true. Um, and I wanted to ask you something before I get into the icing. In the croissants, we had to do a proofing.
mhm.
Did we not have to do something, or did we do that somewhat here by the time in the fridge?
You so and then in the instruction it says before you bake, you take it out and let it sit at room temperature for a bit.
Okay, yeah, about 30 minutes.
Yeah, and then you do that covered
Yes.
or uncovered. It's fine either way, but covered is what you want, and that's kind of a quick proof because the difference between this and other recipes, baking recipes,
Hmm.
is that it's a slow fermentation. So part of the proofing is part of the fermentation process. But if you're doing a
Okay.
slow proofing or a slow fermentation, so letting that yeast slowly eat the sugars and grow, you're kind of doing that, but just over time.
Okay. It just
So like,
naturally comes with it.
yeah, so if you did a bread, it's at room temperature, you're gonna proof it for usually 2 hours. And that proofing is allowing it to rise and letting that yeast do its job. Whereas we're doing this in the fridge.
Hmm.
So
And that just slows it down.
yeah, that's all it does. So it
Okay.
slows it down, which is supposed to allow it to develop a deeper flavor, more breadier flavor. If it
That it did.
does, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I think it does. And I'm pretty sure the science behind it says it does. So
It was a
yeah,
heartier bread.
yeah,
And then coming from the croissants was your like the total opposite.
yeah.
You want a lot much more air in that. But yeah, so moving on to the frosting. So the ingredients for the frosting you have here, and I have the original sheet, and we updated it a little bit because there was a couple things that I missed when I checked it initially.
Hmm.
4 ounces of cream cheese, which is basically just half of one of those bricks of
Yeah.
cream cheese that you get at the grocery store.
Yep.
A full stick of butter,
Hmm.
room temperature again.
Hmm.
I'm assuming for incorporation reasons.
Yep.
1 cup of confectioner's or powdered sugar,
Hmm.
a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then pulp from 1 vanilla bean.
Yep.
And then, not on this list, but I know there's supposed to be salt in it as well. How much salt did you put in?
Just a pinch, like just a
Okay,
little bit.
perfect. Perfect. I did that right because I just did a couple. I have one of those like salt grinders. I just did a couple
Hmm.
little twists
Yeah,
and went from there.
that's it. That's all you need to
Let's go. All
do.
right. So I'm trying not to let you beat me, Artie. I'm trying not to let you. You're like the jazz instructor in that movie where the drummer. What's the name of that? Whiplash. You're like
Yeah,
the
whiplash.
the evil, and I'm just the drummer trying to keep up. But
Wow. All right. I see how this relationship is. All right.
but in the end, I realized that you're a fantastic teacher. So the uh the icing.
Yes.
This this is what was the pardon the pun, the icing on the cake here. It was the best icing I've
But
ever had. Thank you. It was so good. It was so
yeah.
good. And I finally found vanilla bean in my city.
Oh,
I
nice.
actually I actually
Where'd you
got
find
some.
it at?
So where it was in the my main grocery store that I frequent, It was not there the last time I looked. I swear it was not there. And then I looked
Okay.
up and there was like 4 different jars.
Nice.
And then I found one at another grocery store. And then I also got wind of something at Costco. I couldn't find it the first time I went.
That's where I
But
got mine.
yeah, another person, I told my wife, I said, please go on Facebook and send it like an APB of vanilla bean. And in our area,
We need vanilla bean right now.
right?
All point bulletin.
And it worked. We had like 30 or 40 responses, and people were like, oh yeah, if you go, people were like, it's on this aisle, down this far, turn right, stand on your right foot, and you'll find
exactly 3.7 meters.
I got a picture where someone actually, there was a diagram of an arrow pointing where it is in the aisle.
Damn, man. Hey,
Facebook does some good things sometimes.
there you go.
But yeah, I thought, I didn't know if you were intending in the instructions to have the extract and the bean or one of the other.
Both. No, both.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, pretty straightforward. You put the cream cheese and then you mix in with the butter, and then it gets nice and creamy. And then you add the vanilla and salt, mix on low to combine, and then you add the sugar. I added the sugar kind of in like just sprinkles. I didn't add it just dump. I just did like a half a cup, and then I let it kind of incorporate, and then I did another half a cup because I felt like it was just going to get clumpy for some reason. I just made that call, and then scraping down the sides, and that came together. And the little flecks of vanilla bean in the icing, that was artistic.
Right.
I thought
pretty cool, huh?
I thought that was really cool. That was really, really good. And my wife does not like sweet things. And she loved these. I loved them too, but she loved them because they weren't super sweet.
Yeah.
And the salt that we added in the icing as well, wasn't there salt in the 2 teaspoons in the dough? It countered it just right to where it was a good balance of sweet, salt, and then warm. And she made a new pot of coffee just so she could eat one of these while she drinks her coffee, and it was really good. This was a great recipe.
So that was my change to the recipe, is I added the vanilla bean.
Look at you.
That was it. That was my only change to it.
That was your only change?
That was it.
Okay. Well, you made it schmexy. So, wildly received well over here.
Yeah.
The kid technically hasn't had one yet because of the way that the timing table has with me making it. He'll get one tomorrow. But
he better make it quick. He better make it quick.
But God, these were so good. Fresh out of the oven with the frosting dripping on it. Oh, so I'm gonna have to go get another one. Tell me about yours.
Okay. I mean, I made them. So you throw all the dough ingredients in a stand mixer, add in the butter a little bit at a time. It just does the work for you. You take that dough out, put it in the greased bowl, couple fold overs, let it, did the whole process, let it rest, did it again, threw it in the fridge overnight. Pulled it out and rolled it out on my cutting board, and then I transferred it to the baking sheet I was going to use to bake them on. Because most of them are that size, the 16 by 12. So if you roll it out inside this is just a tip if you don't want to do it on a cutting board. So I started on the cutting board, and then I transferred it to the sheet pan to finish it to make sure it got to the exact size. And then inside the sheet pan, I buttered it and did all the sugaring, rolled it, cut it, and then baked it. Yeah.
That's smart.
And then while it baked, I made the frosting. It was delicious. I ate a couple spoonfuls of the frosting, not gonna lie.
I did too.
No, I'm not talking about like finger. I was like, all right, we'll have a couple. I fat kidded it for sure.
I went in with the beater after I was like, honey, would you like it? She's yes.
Give it to me. Oh. All right.
So we continue. I'm sorry.
then baked them, frosted them, and they're delicious. I've had 3 so far. I've had 3.
I just finished my 5th.
And so these come out decent size too. Mine are like, I want to say like 5 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
big.
yeah.
Like these, one of these, you're good. Like it will fill you up.
Yeah, it should fill you up.
You'll still eat another
Yes.
and possibly a third,
Oh,
but one will get the job done, and it's delicious. It's nice. It's got a nice cinnamon flavor, good amount of sweetness. The frosting is delicious. So yeah, it's an awesome recipe.
that cream cheese frosting is it's another world. It really is.
It's so good.
Even though it's good to eat, I mean, it's not healthy, but it tastes good to eat by itself.
Mm-hmm.
It does need to be on something.
The frosting?
Yes, it does. It's a
Yeah.
little overpowering.
Oh,
you know, like
yeah.
and so it works really well. But I could see that going with some other things too. You could
Oh, yeah.
easily use that.
You could put that on anything.
Yes.
Any bread product, just slather it on and eat it. It's like, just do it.
Ugh.
You only
So
live once. Frost everything.
great recipe. Great recipe. Great time. I'm getting more and more comfortable. Like I've said before, in the last couple doughs that we've done, I'm really getting a kick out of it. It's fun.
Dough's fun to work with.
Yes.
Eventually, we'll tackle the sourdough.
Why? What is that like?
Oh, dude. Sourdough is I don't know how people do it so well. I still struggle with sourdough to this day. But I'm talking about from like scratch, where you make your own. What's it called? What's the yeast thing you make for sourdough? Ferment it yourself. What's it called? Starter, where you make your own starter.
You have to like kickstart the yeast?
Yeah. So, tangent. So when you make sourdough, you have to make a starter, which is what gives it that sour flavor. And all it is just flour. It's just flour and water. But the process to make it is you're looking at least a week. And the way it works is you start it, just flour and water, just open air, you just let it do its thing, get all yeasty, and it grows and gets bigger. And you dump half it out, and you add more flour, mix it up, and it continues. And you just repeat this process until you get like this nice pungent smelling starter. And then you make the bread with that starter.
All right. Well, I guess we'll have to throw that on the list of things to make.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're just going to build me up and then crush me with that one. Fantastic work. But no, highly recommend these. Very good. Very. I mean, time wise, again, kind of like the croissants.
Yeah.
A little bit more of a dedication in the scheduling. You got to kind of plan ahead. You can't just roll out of bed and think you'll have these for breakfast. You gotta plan ahead. But not hard.
No, not by any means. It's just like you said, time. Just takes some time, dedication, and I think it's worth it because it's delicious. You're not going to find anything like this unless you go to an actual bakery.
Yes.
But you're not going to go to the store and get these. That's not going to happen.
These are not from a can. These are not like, pressurized and put on your dairy aisle or your cooler cages at the supermarket. This is the real deal.
Yeah.
This is the real deal. It's not your cardboard complimentary breakfast at the hotel.
No. Nope.
This kind of I kind of want to look into Danishes now.
Add it to the list. Put it on there.
All right. Well, dude, I guess we come to the part where you tell everybody where to find us.
Okay, I can do that. As usual, all social media. We are Hot and Hauter. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Kind of haven't been doing that much, but we will. Short started to come out again now that things have calmed down for me.
You've been busy, man.
And YouTube, Hot and Hauter on YouTube. That's where you can get our video podcast, and you can get our audio podcast everywhere you get your podcasts. So I just said podcast a lot there.
No, it's kind of what we do.
Podcast. But that's us. That's where you can get us.
All right, man. Well, I'm going to try really hard not to go eat a 6th cinnamon roll today.
I mean, I think you're gonna be knocking on diarrhea's gate. You push another one. Your body's gonna be like, I can't handle it.
Oh man, it's
DEFCON 5.
well, what's awful? What's absolutely awful is our son had his birthday. It's actually today by recording day. We had a birthday party, so we've got leftover birthday cake. Grandma was in town for the birthday party, so they made snickerdoodles. So I've got snickerdoodles, I've got birthday cake, and now I've got cinnamon rolls. Oh,
just all the things. Oh my god. I don't envy you.
Let's get out of here.
Stronger than I am, sir.
Let's just get out of here before diabetes kicks in.
Before diarrhea starts.
No. All right.
Keep cooking, everybody. See ya.
See ya.